Pulse wasn't just a nightclub. It was a place where people could come to feel welcome. It didn't matter who you were, who you wanted to be. You felt loved. This is what Pulse is now.
It was really important to me that people learned not only the story of what happened at Pulse that night, but also what you can do differently in your life to change the future, how we can become a better society, a better human race. That's why I began the foundation.
I hope that the memorial will bring people together from all walks of life, but I also hope that it can be a place of love.
As a family member, I said, I hope they turn this place into a museum. I want people to come visit so they can take what happened here and pass it on.
I'm really excited about the educational opportunity of the museum and the wonderful things that the onePULSE Foundation is working on to build a stronger global community.
And my hope is that when they walk out, they've learned not only what happened on June 12th, but how to be a better human, that they will be able to spread the message that we will not let hate win. They will leave equipped how to do that.
The interim memorial now is built and it's amazing.
The pictures that are on the barrier wall are of love and support and unity, but mostly you'll see a community, a global community.
This is a magical place. It's always a rainbow, or you'll see a cloud look like an angel. It's peaceful.
People ask if they should come to the memorial. I always recommend it.
It is so welcoming.
There are so many stories.
You can't help but feel the impact. I think everyone should see this.
You'll be so happy that you did.
It gives you a lot of energy of how to go forward.
And it's a really beautiful cathartic experience.
And they're teaching kids that there's no difference between one another person. You always should love.
We found it really important that our angels were not just a name on a wall. And that's why we developed our scholarship program. We had 49 individual scholarships, each in the name of one of our angels, designated by their family members as a way to make sure that their stories lived on forever.
After visiting the memorial, we want people to feel like they're changed for the better, that they want to get involved because the goal is really to stop hate.
There are just so many ways that people can engage with the foundation. Volunteering at our offices, helping us with our events, even just being a guide on site. It's an easy, simple way to be part of the solution.
Being a volunteer for the onePULSE Foundation, it's a life-changing experience.
Come out, check it out, and get involved. Go to the onePULSE Foundation website.
Donate to the onePULSE Foundation to help us build the memorial site to honor all of them, to keep the memories going forever.
Everybody's human. Treat everybody equally.
Love still wins, and the message is still alive and well.
It's going to change your life.
We will not let hate win.
We will not let hate win.
We will not let hate win.
Nosotros no dejaremos que el odio gane.
We will not let hate win.
We will not let hate win.
We will not let hate win.
Love is love, and we will not let hate win.
Pulse nightclub in Orlando was not just a place where people could be free to be themselves, but a place to find community and safety. To know that the essence of Pulse was shattered by a mass shooting and terrorist attack in our country remains just as unimaginable today as it was that night, June 12, 2016. The National Pulse Memorial and Museum is intended to preserve the heart of Pulse, a place where everyone was welcomed and loved. The memorial would be designed as a place to grieve, to honor lives taken and saved, as well as serve as a place to heal and learn. The museum will serve as a community space to tell the history of safe spaces, the tragedy of June 12, 2016, and the response and support of the world. I hope you'll join me in supporting the onePULSE Foundation and help build the National Pulse Memorial and Museum so that we never forget what happened to those precious lives that were taken. We won't let hate win.
Greetings. I'm Dr. Earl Mawat, Vice President of Education for onePULSE Foundation. Our mission is to create and support a memorial that opens hearts, a museum that opens minds, educational programs that open eyes, and legacy scholarships that open doors. To date, we have awarded almost $900,000 in scholarships to undergraduate and graduate students. They are carrying on the hopes, dreams, and aspirations of our 49 angels. Our educational programming under onePULSE Academy officially launched last year with our first conversation starter film screening of 90 days. And then we followed that with 3 more screenings: the editor's cut of Disarm Hate, and From Selma to Stonewall, Are We There Yet? And the transgender experience. We are thrilled to partner nationally with amazing writers, directors, and producers to showcase their important work and to have a discussion afterwards. You'll be introduced later to our incredible panelists. They will be leading us in discussion tonight after we screen our short film. We are so excited to present to you tonight the short film Crush, and we would like to thank the writer, Dominic Colon, for allowing us to screen it. Crush examines unique complexities in LGBTQ dating arena. We're about to get things started, but before we do, please note that parental discretion is advised for some adult languages and themes. Please sit back and enjoy the show, and be sure to stay logged in for the panel discussion with our amazing guests. We'll see you in a few. Enjoy.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Dominic Colon, and I am the writer of Crush.
And hi, my name is Sean Carvajal, and I play Michael.
And this is such an honor to be with you all today in your screening of Crush. This short film is the short film and the gift that keeps on giving. We shot this film in the summer of 2011. And it was the winner of the HBO short film script competition through the New York Latino Film Festival. At the time, I was a theater director for a company that did HIV prevention through theater and social issues. And Sean was a very young member of the company. Sean, how old were you?
When we did the film or when I joined?
When you joined?
I was 15.
So Sean is 15, and he is now not 15 many years later. And he's a professional actor on Broadway, TV, right now currently on Broadway in America, in Buffalo. But this was your first film appearance? It might have, right? Is it? No?
Yeah, this is my first professional job.
First professional job. This was my first in terms of writing on the film side. I'm now a film and TV writer. But this is a project that will always hold near and dear to my heart. As much as this is a film about, a crush and that first, innocent, pure experience. It's a film about, conquering your fear and stepping into the beauty and the fullness of who you are as a person. And that's something that resonates in all of my work, but it was, Crush was very much the impetus for everything that I've done following, because I always tend to write about us being the version of themselves, and oftentimes why we choose not to, and how fear plays into that. And I feel like you will all get a sense of that in, the 9 minutes short film that Crush is. And I'm so excited for you all to view it. Sean, do you have anything you want to say?
The only way out is through, baby.
The only way out is through. So thank you so much, and enjoy Crush.
Yeah.
Told you not to mix, bitch. You lucky you didn't throw over my dress. Not for nothing, I know you sick and shit, but I'm really glad you asked me to come with you. They don't be having proms in online school. Right?
Yeah, my head hurts, among other things.
I don't start with the Brandon shit.
Can you shut up?
If you don't holler at him now, you're never gonna have the chance to do it.
Nikki, it's not that easy.
Keep being a punk. You're gonna end up all tired and lonely in a gay nursing home with 10 cats eating fucking ramen noodles and shit.
Yo, you are so dramatic. Come on. Can I help it? Yo, he's perfection.
Yeah, well, his perfect eyes is coming right this way.
Nikki, don't let me say anything stupid.
Get it together, bitch.
Yo, what's good, y'all? Y'all having fun?
Yeah, man.
Yo, we about to go to the parking lot to smoke. Y'all down?
Nah, I'm already, but I'm down to smoke.
Alright, yo, you got a lighter on you?
Brandon!
What's good?
Normally I don't come out of my face like this to people, but I'm mad drunk right now, so I honestly don't care.
Just say what's on your mind, my dude.
I think you look fucking fine as hell, and I really wanna fuck.
Yo, what?
Oh my God.
Yo, you wildin', man.
My bad, yo.
Do I look like that type of person?
No, I'm not trying to say I thought you were gay or anything.
No, I'm not talking about gay. I'm saying, if a dude wanna holler at me, then he needs to come at me correct, you know?
So you don't mind the fact that I'm feeling you?
Nah, but I'm a respectable dude. You just can't be saying shit like that, you feel me?
No, but I want to. I'm sorry. Look, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to kick it to you like that. It's just, look, Brandon, I've been feeling you ever since freshman year. And I'm scared I'm never gonna get to see you again.
I'm here right now, right? Let's just make this moment last.
All right.
Yo, this is my song.
Yo, yeah, mine too.
You wanna dance?
What?
Do you wanna dance?
With you? Yeah, but yo, Brandon, this is prom. All of our friends and our teachers are here. Yeah, you not scared?
Ain't nobody here except for me and you. So let's go.
While you walk on tomorrow, and our roads are leading separate ways. Take a second, please, to call me. It won't take too long. I need to hear your voice once again. Cause it's moments like this that make life worth living. Moments like this.
Michael!
What happened?
Yo, when we bumped heads, you knocked out.
Tiene que te ill, chichón. Go grab some ice.
You alright?
Yeah, we'll be. Yo, I don't think I'm gonna go smoke with y'all.
You sure?
Yeah.
Alright, man, I'll check you later then.
Later.
Where'd Brandon go?
He went to go smoke.
So you're gonna stand here like a little bitch ass? Go after him.
Nikki, I'm scared. Yo, what if he disses me?
You wanna end up with the cats and the noodles?
No.
Then step your game up, because the only way out is through.
Oh, my bad. Can I get your light?
Yeah, here.
Alright, good luck, man.
Brandon! Do you wanna dance?
The world keeps spinning, going in circles every day. Our hearts are beating brand new drums in brand new ways. If we stand and we talk through our ups and our falls, then we'll learn, we'll shine, we'll grow.
So thank you so much. I hope you all enjoy the film as much as we did it. We were talking while y'all were watching, and we realized it was just 11 years since we shot that film, and we still get asked to screen it. It still holds up, I think, and I think there's why do you think it holds up, Sean?
I think that it holds up, especially in communities like ours, because it is it represents freedom in so many ways. It's such a pure moment in someone's life to feel a crush, and because of the weight, not only addressing the crush of your lifetime and seeing how they're going to react, but in this context it's addressing someone of the opposite sex back at a time in 2011 that had a way bigger stigma, or still had some form of a stigma than perhaps it has lessened now.
Well, specifically also in terms of like representation in terms of film and TV media.
Yes, exactly. In representation and TV media, like we don't see these stories often. I mean, it was 2011, Dom. Like,
yeah, there was no pose. There was no.
President Obama had just signed. Gay marriage had just become 2000.
No, not even. Like
No.
years later, like in yeah, it was deep. This is 11 years ago.
And so there was a huge, there is and there was and there is a huge to get to where we are. And I think that for us, for our community, these stories weren't, when I did this film, I'll share with you guys, 6 months later, I got kicked out of my house. I was homeless. And it was because of this film, because my family and my mother did not, it just wasn't acceptable. 11 years later, my cousin has a gay flag that his mother bought him, hanging in his bedroom. And so for me, this film, it's why it's so relevant, and why I think that people might still keep going back, is because this is a story that continues to need to be told in communities such as ours, because this is so pure and so beautiful, of falling in love and exploring your own feelings.
It's timeless.
It's timeless.
It's timeless. Yeah, it's very specific. It's one of the things that I'm most proud of, that I've ever done. And it created a family. Like we are still like, you're my family. DJ who plays is my family. And we continue to create and work together. And we'll continue to share this film as long as people ask for it.
I just also wanted to highlight, and I just want to say, like, to you and to the HBO Latino Film Festival, like, this was before Pose. This was before, there were many films that led the foundation to where we are now in our media. And for me, this film was one of them. It was a film that expressed this story in our community. And it's beautiful. It's universal, because we all understand that. We all understand that yearning and that deep desire to reach out to somebody and say, I like you, and the fear that comes with that. And so thank you.
I remember the fear that I had when we played Dominican Night. So for those of you who don't know, there's a lot of homophobia and toxic masculinity within the Latino community. But in the festival, we had an evening that was just solely dedicated to Dominican film, and not in the hierarchy of like toxic masculinity. But if we're going to do that, Dominican culture is really high in that. So I was super nervous about screening there, because I was like, oh my God, people are going to say things. It's going to be, and it was the most positive, like loving environment. Like people vibe with the film, and it just goes to show, it's just like, it made me check my own biases, And just the fact that this, what I thought would be received a certain way, was actually received the opposite with love, was something that, you know, I will always cherish and move forward and be aware. It's like, you never know. Just create amazing work and the people will respond.
Yeah, universal work, and everyone can respond. And thank you, Dom. I mean, yeah, I'm so happy that it's still being presented 11 years afterwards, because it's still an important story to be had and to be shared, you know? Yeah.
So thank you, onePULSE, for the honor. Thank you, Sean, for doing this bright and early. We love y'all. Keep watching, keep supporting. Yeah, thank you.
Peace.
Good evening. I hope you enjoyed the presentation. And now it's time for the panel discussion, where we explore the movie's theme. Joining us this evening are subject matter expert and mental health therapist at From Under the Rug, Brandon Kennedy, who also goes by the pronouns he and him.
Good evening, everyone.
We also have Andres Acosta, he, him, Director of Respite Operations, Peer Support Space. Followed by Alex Maldonado, pronouns she and they. And then we have Sierra Tirado, pronouns they, them, ella. And last but certainly not least, we have my amazing co-host and onePULSE Foundation teammate, Mark Joshem, pronouns they, them, and their. And at this point, I'm passing the mic to Mark. So Mark, let's go ahead and get things started.
All right, good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. You could be anywhere, but you are here with us to have this conversation. Like Dr. R mentioned, my pronouns are they, them, and my name is Mark. And I will be co-hosting the film screening with Dr. Earl. I'm really excited to discuss this film and really dig into what does having a crush look like in the LGBTQ+ community. I always like to start by offering that this is a brave space. So a brave space is a space where participants feel comfortable learning, sharing, and growing. A brave space is inclusive to all races, sex, genders, abilities, and lived experience. So that is what we want to do here today. We want to create a brave space for dialogue. I also want to take a moment to share my excitement about the film. I love how New York it is. How it depicts Latinx culture and how the story was told. When she said not for nothing, I was like dying on the floor because it's very Latinx. It's very New Yorkan, okay? And I also want to talk about how the story was told. I feel like a lot of times when you watch LGBTQ+ film, you're kind of waiting for the foot to drop. And it's really interesting how the filmmaker understood that. It was kind of playing with us throughout the film. And then at the end, when we learned that, oh, he's dreaming, and it's like, oh, what did he say? Brandon, did you say yes? Say yes. So that was really exciting. So I'm going to go ahead and talk about the questions that I have for you today. I'm going to go ahead and say, I'm going to pick on someone. Don't take it personal. I just want to keep the conversation flowing. All right. So the first question is, describe that first moment when you realized that you had a crush on someone of the same gender. Sierra, do you want to go ahead and take that question first?
Oh, how did you know I was thrilled to answer it? Because for me, I was just a little tyke, you know? I was going to a Christian school. I was one of the few Latino people there. And my best friend in the whole wide world was a white girl named Alyssa. And me and Alyssa, we were inseparable. I mean, we, since preschool, were just always together, always bonded at the hip. And I remember every day we had to go to chapel in the mornings. And every time we would go and we would hold hands and we would walk together. And we would do this from preschool through kindergarten, through first grade, second grade. And it wasn't until around third grade that suddenly things started to change. And one day I went to hold Alyssa's hand and she told me no. And for me, this was shocking because I've never been told no before. And I didn't see why she wouldn't want to hold hands with me anymore. And so when I asked why, she said, well, that's gay. And for me, I didn't even like know the word. I didn't know the language back then. And I didn't realize that that was a bad thing to be. And as I kind of grew up and I realized just how upset I was at the fact that she didn't want to hold my hand anymore, and that there were these changes in the kids around us, that's when I realized that I had feelings for her. I did have a crush on her. That while everyone else was talking about Tanner and Shane and all of these other little boys, I was writing about Alyssa in my notebook and wishing that I had been, if I could have that same attention that the boys was getting, that maybe I could, you know, be the Prince Charming. And I think that was for me my first realization that I have a crush on somebody that is like me.
Sierra, thank you so much for answering. You brought up an interesting point. Like the first time you have a crush on someone, like I think going back for me, I didn't register it as, oh, this someone is the same gender as me. It was just like, I have a crush. Like it wasn't, and then it came like the socialization of it came later on where I'm like, oh, and this person is the same gender as me. And now there's all these different contexts that I have to understand. So thank you so much for sharing. Is there anyone else that would like to take this question? You could just raise your hand so I know. All right, Alex, go for it.
I actually have kind of a funny story related to this question because it happened around the time I was in 8th grade. And similar to Sierra, I found out what was later I had a crush on my best friend. We had this very funny conversation where I was talking to her and I was like, yeah, I feel like if things were different, like I would just date girls. Like dating girls just seems like so much better. But like, I guess not. I guess I'll just date boys. But like, she kind of looked at me funny. She was like, "What do you mean?" And I was like, "Well, you know, I can't date girls. But wouldn't it be so much better? Like, there's so much more like emotional and compassionate, and like I feel like I get along so much better." And she was like, okay." And it wasn't until like many, many years later that I realized I was like, "Oh, well, that's probably indicative of something deeper, huh? Like it probably means something." So yeah, I realized much later on that like those feelings I had towards her and like being able to confide in her like that, it probably was a crush, like deeper than just like close friendship. But it was just like really funny. Me later on realizing, oh, that wasn't just like super great friends.
Alex, thank you so much for sharing. Is there anyone else that would like to take on this question? If not, we can move on to the next question. Andres, go ahead.
Yeah, so the first time that I did have a crush on someone of the same sex, it was a friend from middle school. You know, he was Puerto Rican. His name was Giovanni. And we were both in ESOL together. We used to get along pretty well. And it wasn't until I came over to his house one day and we were just talking. And he's like, you know, people are saying that you're gay. And I was like, you know, so I didn't really get it at the time because it wasn't like I was fully like, oh yeah, I'm a homosexual. But what really struck me is like, yeah, they say that because you always hang out with girls. And in my head, I was like, oh no, but that's no excuse. Like, I'm hanging out with girls. How could I possibly be gay? But it was the first time that I felt attracted to somebody and had them also kind of like see through me. So it was also the first time that anybody really verbalized, like, I think you might be gay. And it definitely was terrifying. At the same time, it wasn't until later on, like everyone else, that you're like, oh, you know, he was right. So, yeah.
Hey, Mark, I have a question, if I can ask one.
Yes, go ahead.
And then I'm going to have a question for you, Brandon.
Jump right in there, doctor. My question to anyone who may want to jump in, just to kind of take the question a step further. Right now, we're talking about your crushes as it relates to more so like first crushes, childhood experiences, etc. But I think to kind of bring it also up to speed to where the film is coming from, when was the time that after you identified like, okay, this is a little bit more like my training wheels are off, I'm kind of running in my lane, and now I've realized that I have a crush? Like, are any of you open to sharing those experiences to kind of bring it up to where the film is also coming from? Sierra looks excited. And I'm excited to receive, so give it.
I'm so excited to tell it because it's my little love story. So I was in middle school, and since I was kind of early on the realization that, oh, I like girls, I was a little quicker to realize, oh, I'm not straight. Definitely not straight. So it was about in middle school when I was in the locker room, right? You know, if anyone remembers PE class. And there was this girl named Eliana. And it was the first day, and we were changing. And I remember looking over at her, and I couldn't take my eyes off of her. I was just utterly struck. And she was a grade older than me. She was a little dorky, but very smart. She was very good at French. And she just blew me away. And I remember I used to be a very big like sports player, and I loved PE. I loved getting competitive. Every single day, I would refuse to play because she was a total geek, and she preferred to just like walk in circles around the games. So I'd be watching all of my friends going and playing like flag football, and I'd be like, no, I'm good. I'm just gonna hang out with Ellie. You know, I don't really want to get competitive right now. I'm good. I'm all good. It's me and her. We got this. And I would just walk with her. And I was just sitting there hoping that there was a chance that she would show that she was interested in girls, just maybe. And I would like throw little hints at her. I was doing that thing. If any of you were ever kids who were trying to like get somebody's attention, especially if you were ever identified as a young girl, the whole like, oh, you have such soft hands. Oh, I'm actually a palm reader. Do you want me to read your palm? Yeah, my whole family's into Santeria. Let me just get a look at that. You know, we're all like witches. And so that was like,
did you grab your candle too?
Oh, I had candles. I used to wish, my mom used to let me like write names under the candles and like stick it and pray. And I used to write Ellie like girls, Ellie like girls, Ellie like girls. The funny thing is, my brother had a crush on Ellie too, because we all used to sit together. And my brother was also utterly awestruck because she was so smart, she was so intelligent, she was so funny and cute and dorky. And me and my brother are very similar people. So we were both just like, one of us has a shot here. One of us. So it's me versus you, buddy. We are on. So I remember it was during the middle school dance that my brother went up to her and tried to ask her to dance with him. My brother's a very nervous person. So it was kind of similar to what the movie presents in this middle school, this big dance, and everyone's together. It's all very cute. My brother goes up to her, tries to ask her to dance, but gets so nervous that he bursts into tears on the spot and then runs away. So me, being the good sibling that I am, I'm like, oh, let me do damage control. Oh, he's having a rough day. You know, Ellie, why don't we dance together, you know, just to pass the time? And Ellie tells me now we're partners, we're living together now, which is the cutest part. We've been together since middle school, practically, because Ellie said that that was a moment that she realized that she liked girls, was when we danced together as friends and just realizing that, oh, I'm feeling something now that I hadn't felt when I was dancing with the boys and with my male friends, just, you know, trying to make myself feel something and feel something. And it wasn't until years later that both of us finally stopped dancing around that in our best friendship and actually made the leap to becoming partners. And we ended up first kissing in Prague. It was very cute during a field trip. But again, we have been together for 5 years now, and I've never been so happy to actually make the leap when it comes to that kind of crush.
And thank you for sharing that experience and kind of giving us those details and background. And I think a lot of times too, when we're talking about these sensitive subject matters, vulnerability is like the word that comes to mind first, right? But I think also a level of risk association comes along with that vulnerability. I need to be able to convince myself that the level of risk is going to be mitigated for the level of vulnerability that I'm going to do. And I think you kind of did it in the most safest way possible, where it's like, okay, you know what? If I'm asking her to dance with me, kind of like just as a girlfriend kind of thing, it may not pose as much of a risk. Just so happen, I think also some of those odds worked out in your favor as life would have it for you. Thanks for sharing that.
And I've never been so grateful.
And Dr. Earl, you were going to say something, but did anybody else want to share like a high school experience, or maybe even an adult experience too, like post high school? Andres looks like he might have something.
Yeah, so
I came out when I was 14, and like I knew that I was gay and everything, but I kind of stayed away from the whole crushes thing. I had a really, I was very shy in high school, and it wasn't until I got into the military and I went in the Navy that eventually I was like, okay, I'm an adult. I'm out here, away from my family, from everything. And there was this guy on my ship that he used to work out at the same time that I would work out. It was the same thing, and he was tall, all-American looking dude, just like I was so crazy over him. And me and my friend Shayna, we used to go and run with him. And I stayed away from like the flirting thing. He knew I was gay because everyone knew I was gay at that point. But I stayed away from the flirting thing just because it was like out of respect in my head, but really it was fear. It was fear that like the moment that I said something, he was going to be like, no. We kind of danced around everything, and then it wasn't until...
Was it a fear of anger? I know you're in was it a fear of anger? You thought that he might be angry towards you?
Yeah, absolutely. Like last thing, we were good friends. So the last thing I wanted was to lose that friendship and have it turn to like, I'm disgusted or I'm angry or I'm mad. And it wasn't until we had a port call in Thailand that, we went out, there was a lot of alcohol involved, and we ended up kissing, and then other things happened. And that night in my head, I was like, this is everything. Like, it's everything I ever wanted, and it's coming to life, and it's true. And unfortunately, it was also the time that I learned that when people haven't accepted their sexuality, just because they express it doesn't necessarily mean that they're ready to act on it, right? Mm-hmm. So we kissed, it was great, there was other things, but that ruined our friendship because after that, he wouldn't make eye contact with me. He stopped hanging out with me. It was like, whatever happened, he wasn't ready to face. And so what to me felt like the culmination of like this long time coming, like, oh, finally we're gonna admit we like each other, went the other way. And it was like, no, I'm gonna reject everything that happened because I'm not gay.
Yeah, and I'm really glad, and thank you for sharing that experience as well too, because I think you brought another element and another light to the conversation, and I think that it makes it much more progressive when we start to begin to have conversations about sexual fluidity. Like when we begin to have conversations about sexual fluidity, we oftentimes put together, and it's very societal, right? Just because we are wanting to engage with sex of the same sex, it also means that we want to engage in all of these other activities of our lives at the same time in association with that, when we could just want to have our experience. Doesn't mean that I can't necessarily identify as a gay and or queer man if I may want to have a sexual engagement with an F to M. There might still be, the female parts, birth parts that are still there, but I also may still identify as this person. But I think it just goes to speak of how much we may tie onto our personalities when we add in like the things that lack sexual fluidity.
And Andres, you actually, this actually is a perfect opportunity, unless you want to go, Dr. Earl.
I will give the floor, but I do would like for Brandon to explain. He used the term F to M, and people that's outside of the community that's watching this will probably scratching their head. What was that? So, Brandon, if you could explain F to M.
So, and we'll definitely use some layman's terms. So I know a lot of us are probably much more well versed in some of those terms. F to M, female to male. So a person who was born female, was identified as female at birth, and at some point in time they decided to do the transition, the T, F to M, they decided to do the transition to begin identifying as male. So they may also identify with the he, him, his pronouns if they should choose to do so. That kind of breaks it on layman's terms. If anybody else may want to chime in on that to add any extra details.
I could extrapolate a little bit, because another term that we also might see is like AFAB or AMAB, which is like really assigned female at birth or assigned male at birth. And it really does tie into the idea of gender and sex having a separation. So when you love someone of the same gender, that doesn't have to include like their sexual characteristics. It's about loving the individual. And I think that the idea of fluidity really comes into that when we start to finally like separate ourselves from these more archaic notions of how oftentimes a community is associated so heavily with sex and, you know, genitalia. And as we've seen at a lot of the most open spaces for people within the queer community are often overtly sexual spaces, you know, clubs, strip clubs, bars, sex shops. I remember for me, one of the first experiences I had in seeing like pride merchandise, like just openly displayed, was at an adult store or like, you know, like a Spencer's, places that are expected for younger people to be able to just sort of wander into and enjoy their time. So again, it's very interesting we bring up sexual fluidity because I think that that's another really important thing. And one of the things I do actually appreciate about this film is just sort of how, you know, sweet it is when it comes to that. Like, it's never really like mentioned. In fact, it's kind of funny when the record scratches and he's like, whoa, 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 don't like overtly sexualize me, dude. I want to make like an emotional connection with you. There's more to this than that. During that dream sequence, that when I was watching it, like touched me because I was like, oh, thank you for like reminding us that that's not all that there is to this community, that it's so much more than that. It's a connection of spirit, of personhood that is more important than what's between the legs.
Absolutely. I think society can also want to fit us in boxes, if you will. It's like you need to check this box or fit inside of this, you know, short perimeter. And, you know, the truth of the matter is we're so much bigger than those boxes. And then as people who identify as LGBTQIA plus people, we're continually trying to add ourselves into those boxes that we don't fit in. And then when you look at it from a case sensitive, individualistic perspective, we should be defining what our own boxes are, not only just for ourselves, but we should also be defining the size of the box that we fit in with our spouses. This isn't a relationship that we have to define or make sense to anyone else besides us. And as long as we're on the same page about what we're doing, progressivism then starts to settle in, and we exemplify to other individuals, hey, this is what it looks like to be us, not necessarily to be, you know, Jay and Wilda, even though I love Jada and Will, but it's like not to necessarily be this couple or to be that couple or anyone else, but this is what our relationship may look like, in pressing it even forward, relationships of 2, 3, etc. And we get into polygamy, but that's a whole nother separate conversation.
You know, I do want to, yeah, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Oh, go ahead, Dr. Earl.
Yeah, so I do want to chime in here. One of the biggest issues is the commodification of the queer culture into sex, right? Mm-hmm. Into sex. And why is that dangerous? Because that becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy where we start to articulate our lives, move along those lines because of what's being the social learning, right? So it collapses in that. What we're forgetting, though, is the capacity of love. And that's what it's about, the capacity to love individuals. So it's a strong pull because people want to make money off of this, right? And so they do the marketing and everything. My hope is that it just does, it's like what Brandon was saying, right? You know, delete yourself from all that and who are you, right? And carve the path out for you and not what's being imposed onto you, right? So that is so critical. We have to make that discern. We have to discern that it is the capacity to love. Forget all this pollution, distraction about the sex. And so I did want to chime in on that. And I will pivot back to Mark because she was about to say something.
I really wanted to bring it back to Andres because I think they really brought a very a topic that we kind of know about in the LGBTQ plus community, as well as bring it back to what Brandon was talking about in terms of fluidity. So like what happens when you get mixed signals from their crush because they're still figuring out how they fit in the LGBTQ plus community? Like that's a different type of heartbreak to know that, you know, this person has feelings for you, but they just can't, they're just not at the stage in their life or in their journey to kind of accept it. So like I wanted to kind of shoot that question over to Alex and see if you have ever experienced that.
Yeah, I actually have. So probably one of my first, or I guess it wasn't a serious relationship because we never actually dated, but very close to dating, was I had a very close friend in high school, that I had already come out my sophomore year. And so my junior year, she was very interested and came to me and was really interested in finding out about the community and how I came out and how I figured out that I was bisexual, stuff along those lines. And it slowly like became clear to me that she was asking these questions out of like interest for me eventually. But I sat her down one day and we had a very serious conversation where I was like, are you like, I had to be kind of like blunt with her and be like, are you actually interested in me? Or are you kind of just like interested in the idea of relationship with like a woman? And she was very honest with me and was like, yeah, I think I'd be interested in a relationship with a woman, but I don't think I could actually go through with it. There was a lot of pressure from her family and like pressure from her friends. She had a very like weird ex-boyfriend that she was going through some problems with. And so it was like a painful experience for us to kind of go through that. But in the end, I was glad for her like being candid and being able to confront the idea that yes, in theory, she was interested in a same-sex relationship, but it just wasn't possible for her at the time. And, you know, as people, we're unique. We can change over the course of our lifetimes. Just because she was in a relationship with me doesn't mean she could never be in a relationship with a woman. But it was kind of bittersweet where I was like, I'm glad that I could, like, open this door for you. But at the same time, it's like, damn, is it me? But, yeah, it was... High school is such a strange place, such a strange time for all of us.
Alex, thank you so much for sharing. And not only that, not only different stages and, you know, your journey, but also different stages of coming out. So like in the film, you know, obviously he's out to Nikki, love Nikki. Nikki would have me just crying, laughing the whole time. But like, and I was wondering during the film, I was like, okay, so a lot of times, you know, you're out to your friends, but not necessarily out to your family. Like for me, in my case, I went to UCF, go Knights, but I was out to the college campus, but I wasn't necessarily out to my family. So what happens when someone is at, you know, different stage of you know, being out to their various, you know, community? I will pass this question on to Andres if you want to answer it. And then we could go to Sierra afterwards if you want.
Yeah, sure. So I had the experience of coming out early on and just like ripping that Band-Aid off to my family. And it wasn't easy. And there was a huge process that goes around it. But by the time I was an adult and I was ready to date, I had already gone through that, right? So to me, there's kind of this rule that I have where it's like, I'm not gonna date a baby gay. Like, both in terms of love, like you can't be that much younger than me, and also in terms of if you're just not coming out of the closet and experiencing what it's like for the first time, like that's a lot. And I know that I personally, I'm not in a place where that's something that I can walk you through, right? Like you have so much more figuring out to do. You have so much more things to explore, and we're just in different places in life. And it's
that's a wonderful point. That's like the different. So like for you, it's like I can't be your first. You're like I can't be your first queer crush. Like I can't be the first. Maybe I could be the fifth, the sixth, maybe fourth if we're pushing it, but I can't be your first crush. Is there, Sierra? Would you like to take this question?
Oh yeah, for sure. And I really want to bring up what both of you, what I kind of, I don't want to say reduced, but like what I feel like the distilled point of like self-respect. Because so often we see people when they're put in these positions of kind of being like the experiment, you know, you are the test run. And I know I also had experience with that in high school because I was one of the very few people who was very open about the fact that I wasn't straight, that I liked girls, that I wasn't really interested in guys. So also I went to, I have to say this again, a Christian school, and Christian girls, whew, there's a whole host of repression going on there. So when you see like someone who is very openly like masculine presenting, who is very clearly like not into dudes, very much into girls. I was on the varsity softball team. I mean, I was not very subtle about it. I wore my brother's uniforms. And, you know, you usually become like the person that they kind of hone in on as, will you be my guide through this? Or can I like test things out with you? And it becomes like absurdly clear where you stand, and depending on where you're at with yourself, like the feeling that that's the best you can get. You know, that if I don't settle for this, for being just sort of like a straight girl's fascination or a straight person's fascination, then what other love can I have? And it's really like understanding that, no, I do deserve somebody who would be proud to be around me, who would be proud to introduce me to their family and their friends as their partner, and not just a roommate or a close friend and just a bed bug whenever you want. So I feel like it's, again, it's a lot about self-respect and, you know, being able to view yourself as someone who's worthy of love and attention. Because it's okay to be selfish, and it's okay to admit your needs and not have to think of the other person all the time, because, you know, there's a line you have to draw in how much you're willing to give of yourself to another person, how much you're willing to make yourself vulnerable just for another person's benefit.
Oh, if I can chime in there for a bit, I think that Sarah, you also bring up a really good point in terms of one of the things when I'm working with my clients, I like to focus on like a holistic approach. I feel that if you are focusing on yourself holistically, whether it's being happy with having a career versus having a job, or whether it's how you do your self-care, all these different things that just kind of make up who you are. When you're focusing on life and approaching it from a holistic approach, it can oftentimes allow for much more safer bounce back, if you will, from the woes that life throws at you. And one of the scenarios I use with my clients all the time is, if you're on the 3rd floor of a building and the building is on fire, if the fire department tells you, hey, we have a landing pad for you, all we need to do is just to have you jump. You jump, you land on that landing pad, and the only thing you need to do is process the fact that you jump. And eventually, once you process that, you roll off the mat and you walk and you continue to move on, versus I jumped out and now I have to deal with my broken bones, my limbs, and everything else. And then I have the ability to maybe walk, and probably even with a limp, right? But I think that with all of that being said, when you're looking at a lot of this from a holistic perspective, it allows you to feel safe with being vulnerable and to put yourself out there. But there is a difference, going back to the self-respect aspect that you have. Oftentimes people feel as if they need to conform. I want this, and I want this so bad that I'm willing to conform or compromise myself, my character, my integrity, who I am as a person, as an individual, so that I can see to it that I get this. This is where our wants and our needs and our desires have gone to an unhealthy place and space, right? But I think if we can get to a place where we say, you know what, all of it's not my responsibility. I'm not responsible for you getting to where you are. Kind of like Andres was saying too. It's like, I'm not responsible for getting you to this place where I would be able to benefit from it. If you just so happen to get to that place or space, and if within my capacity, like Alex was saying, I can help you some kind of way to get to that, I'm appreciative of that. But now what we've done is taken our situationship, if you will, and we put it inside of a box that's actually designed to fit it, where the risk has been mitigated. I can be a part of your journey in a way that I feel comfortable with, and that my vulnerability allows me to, and that ultimately benefits me in that process of being a friend, or being, you know, a confidant, if you will. But I think we have to make sure that we're doing an assessment, and making sure that during our assessment, whatever it is we're doing, however it is we're going to choose to interact and engage, it's with good rationale that was put in mind with it, and it's not with just irrational thoughts.
Brandon, I'm so happy that you're really hitting on the topic of risk. And I think like having a crush is like when you're talking about the assessment and how do we process these risks, right? So I wanted to bring up the question of, you know, every time we name our feelings to our crush, right? Especially if we're not sure if they're part of the LGBTQ plus community. Say like you're at a grocery store, you see a cute person and you're like, oh, do I offer them some mangoes, some strawberries, get this conversation? Do I drop something so they can pick it up? You know, have a real romantic, you know, Julia Roberts kind of moment, you know, but I wanted to ask, like every time you name your feelings to your crush, you're essentially outing yourself, right? So can you all share if you have any guidelines or your thought process when choosing to tell your crush? Is there like, do they have to say certain keywords? Do they have to talk about Glee all the time? Like what are we thinking about when we're like, you know, like, is this a risk? Is this a risk that I should take? to tell my crush? Because throughout the film, we see him, and Nikki is like his biggest advocate. We see him trying to assess, like, is this risk worth it? Is this risk worth it? And Nikki is like, you're gonna end up alone with cats, okay? Get it.
And noodles, ramen.
Yes. So I wanted to pose that question. How do you assess the risk in terms of telling your crush? I would go with, let's start with Andres, if you're okay with taking this question.
Yeah, sure, absolutely. I think things have changed since getting out of the military, because nowadays I'm very active in the LGBTQ community here in Central Florida. And so it's made it so that when I do end up having a crush on someone, I already know they're involved with this organization or they're doing this or that. And so I kind of already know that they're queer. And that's kind of like a perk-state of mind now, right? So like you have to be openly gay, and I have to know that you're gay before I'm like able to develop feelings. I might think this guy's cute in passing, and I might like, you know, be like, oh, that dude's attractive. But when it comes to actually like allowing myself to start to develop those feelings, I have to know the person is queer, like, you know, because I've already experienced the heartbreak of going after somebody that's not figuring it out, and so my heart kind of learned that lesson. So
yeah. So
you know, Andres?
Oh, go ahead. I was about to say, so for you, you have to kind of know that they're already in the community through like shared spaces, pretty much, that you already occupy.
Oh yeah.
Go ahead, Brandon, or Dr. Earl.
I think it's really obvious too with the way that Andres put it. Like, you've practiced acceptance, right? Like, you've gotten to a place where it's like, I know what this experience has been like. I know what this experience has been like, and I accept that if I saw this guy that I just think is really, really fine, if I don't engage with him beyond just appreciating his physical being, I'm totally okay with that. And I think when we get to a place of acceptance, that makes much of a bigger difference. And you're not sitting there pondering like, oh, what if I had did this, or what if I did that? No, I've accepted the fact that I'm okay with this particular level of approach.
Okay, so yeah, so here's my thought, right? So in the case of Andres and Brandon, to an extent, okay, you know, I've been in this for a while, and this, you know, I'm comfortable reaching out and things like that. Let's help the individual that is not at that comfort level, right? It is high risk for them to reach out to someone. What piece of advice? And I say this particularly because let's not forget that the communities that were impacted by the Pulse incident are communities of color. Mm-hmm. And what do we know about communities of color? It's not as embraced in those communities. So how can we help those individuals that have high risk in reaching out to someone? Brandon.
That's right. I think, just quite frankly, and therapeutically, I think that a lot of people just tend to overthink the process. I see a very attractive person in front of me. Just because you see an attractive person in front of you does not necessarily mean that you're going to read and I'm sorry, that you're going to give and accept the same love languages, have things in common, et cetera, et cetera. I think a lot of it goes down to the basics. Like, if you see a person, I think wanting to just be able to enjoy and engage in conversation with the person might be something that could be beneficial regardless of where it goes. So if you were to see a person that you found attractive, just striking up a conversation about something that might be relevant to the space or the environment. I don't know, for example, and it might sound very silly, you're in a grocery store, right? You're in a grocery store. Let's say you just so happen to see the aisle that the person in. Sure, it might have involved a little bit of stalking. You're in that aisle and you say, hey, have you tried these Impossible Burgers? I've been thinking about going vegan, but I'm just like, have you tried these before? Whatever it may be. But I think that's a safe way of being able to put yourself out there, keeping it relevant to your surroundings, et cetera. You know, for example, if you go to an art exhibit and you see this person is really attractive to you, hey, how are you enjoying the exhibit? Just kind of like sparking up conversation with something that might be relevant and allowing for the space and the environment to take it to the next step. And you can take that and really apply it to a lot of different things.
But Brandon, I think you just gave the best piece of advice, right? Just to not overthinking. And I think that's something that the community, especially folks at high risk, it's okay to go talk to someone, right? You know, talk about something in common or something that is within that situation. But to overthink it, then it creates a barrier, right? And
well, Dr. Earl, I think two things our society struggles with all the time. We're spoiled. That's number one, right? Not only are we spoiled, but we also thrive off of instant gratification. It's like, not only am I going to go and talk to you, but you also are going to come back and you're going to talk to me. And you're going to talk to me for all these reasons that I've given myself in my mind that like you need to talk to me. Like, and if you don't talk to me, I'm somehow angry and I'm upset with you and you feel like you're privileged and all these other things. It's like, no, maybe that person's just not that into you based off of whatever reason or justification they came up with. And sometimes that's hard for people to sit with. Not everybody is going to be that into you. But yeah, when we look at things from an instant gratification and from a spoiled kind of perspective, a lot of people can have some senses of self-entitlement that can be to their detriment more so than be to their benefit. Were you about to say something, Sierra? Oh, you just get 2 snaps in a circle? I love it.
I do wanted to talk a lot about, well, we're still on the theme of, I feel like the theme of risk right now, right? And how we identify the risk. And Brandon, you mentioned, which by the way, I might need to like email Brandon and ask him to help me with my dating life. But like the theme
we can
of
certainly
risk,
talk about intentional dating.
yes, but the theme of risk, and I think like a lot of times, like one of my friends, Michael, he would say like he feels like we all have, and I'll say the term gaydar. So for those who don't know, a gaydar is basically like something, an intuition. It's just something in your soul that just lets you know, like I think, like an inclination that I think this person might be a part of our community. So like, I wanted to ask a question of, in terms of risk and assessments, how does having a gaydar or not having a gaydar impact how you approach your crush, right? So in terms of like that level of risk, like if you have a gay, I think I'm a little middle ground. Actually, no, let me not lie like this. I have a great gaydar. I was trying to be humble, y'all. It wasn't working. I have a great gaydar, okay? I be knowing before you be knowing, okay? But for those that have a gaydar or don't have a gaydar, I'm gonna shoot this question to Alex. How do you have one? How does it impact how you view risk and process risk and assessments?
So I feel like I'm on the opposite side of the spectrum. I think my gaydar has been dulled because I've been at UCF for like 3 years now, and I'm just around gay people all the time. Like I don't have a single friend that's not queer at this point. But even before that, I think when I was in high school, it's kind of strange how like queer people kind of congregate even before we know we're queer. So like my friend group would be like, oh, there's like a straight girl here, there's a straight dude there, but like as we grow closer, I'm like, there's something a little sus about you, huh? And they like, we find out later on. But I don't know. The question was about like assessing risk related to the gaydar. I think sometimes there are just like, once you become more versed in the community, there are just some like tells where like they'll say something, or they'll be a part of this like fandom, or like be really into this media where it's like a green flag, and you're like, oh, so you're one of us. So I think as you become more accustomed to like meeting other people in the community, it becomes easier and easier for you to tell. And so it kind of alleviates some of that risk for you, where you're more comfortable once you know the person more, and you're like, well, there's a pretty good chance that they're like something like me. But that's just my experience.
Oh, no, I mean, thank you so much for sharing. And you brought up a point in terms of like, we tend to seek each other out before we even knew. Like all of my friends, we came out to each other at different stages. Like my close high school friend, right? My family. So it's just like you take, well, my family, I'm kind of stuck with them. But like you tend to gravitate towards people in your community, and you don't know why you gravitate towards them, but you tend to find out later on. Brandon, I'm not an expert. Is there a reason or how we identify? Like, what is the Wizard of Oz? What is behind the curtain? Like, how do we? Is it?
I'm not necessarily sure about how the land of Oz and our gayness may necessarily work, but I think a lot of times it truly just depends on like the social circumstances or the environment. And Alex is kind of getting to that as well too. Like I think if you were to meet someone inside of a LGBTQIA plus affirming space, like if you met them inside of that space, it speaks to what Andres was saying too. Like this could give me an indication that you are either an ally or you're someone who identifies with my rainbow community, right? And I also think too, I don't want to forget about like the basic stuff. Like when you are assessing level of attraction, so I'm speaking more from an intimate perspective at this point, right? I think when you're assessing level of attraction, you might be assessing looks. Like, okay, is this person looking at me? Am I looking at this person? When we have noticed that we're looking at each other, am I greeted with a smile in return, or am I greeted with something that I can identify as kindness? Or am I greeted with something that's like, God, why is this person continuing to stare at me? You know, because like it can happen, right? But I think that when we get down to some of the basics, some of those things are cues that we tend to go based off of. Again, if I got mutual eye contact from an individual and it seems like I'm being met with kindness, that might also encourage me or that other individual to engage in further communication. Otherwise, it's going to say to me, you know what? I don't think I'm being paid back with the same level of mutual attraction as what I would like. So I'm probably going to go on ahead and go on about my way or my day. But I think our environments play a lot of the factors. It's the reason why online dating and online meeting has become so popular, right? I've now taken away this sometimes awkward level of risk association with in-person engagement. And now I've taken it to this online meeting where it's like, I can put myself out there. I can say I'm such and such, and I find you attractive or whatever. And I can, with the click of a button, get out of the entire situation if I want to. I may not have processed it all mentally, but now with the click of a button, I've gotten completely out of it. That's why online dating and meeting people in spaces like Meetup, for example. Like, I don't know if any of you guys have used Meetup before, but it's basically an application that allows for you to engage with other individuals of like-minded associations. Like creating a Netflix account and it asks you, oh, what genres are you interested in? And now I'm going to give you suggestions based off of that. I think that when you don't have those different things, we have these other things that people find help them come out of their shells a little bit more. When you're able to go to that queer space where you can find queer people that might be of like minds, when you can go to that Facebook group or search into that Facebook query of LGBT gatherings or whatever the case may be. It could even be a book club. I think when you're able to kind of go to those different spaces, it helps you to kind of mitigate your risk. And like Andres was saying in the very beginning with that guy that he was dealing with in the military, it's like, you know what? Let me figure out what my level of risk association might be with this so that I can make a very informed decision and also not compromise my mental health. Like I still have to live with me at the end of the day, regardless of who's accepting of my communication and who isn't, or rejecting it, as we oftentimes say.
Brennan,
I'll just extend on that, Mark. So in social psychology, we do have some theories that actually proven, if you will, social selection hypothesis and repulsion hypothesis. That you know, you can come to my office where I'm right upstairs, and we can have conversations on that. But it's explained out theoretically, and I go completely in agreement with it.
I wanted to say that, Brandon, when you were talking about does this person give me a look? I was thinking about the film where there's like these different shots of like Brandon coming closer and closer. And you can see moments where like he's like biting like his lips and he's like, you know, the main character is trying to like literally dissect. Like you can see it, like he's trying to dissect, like, how is he looking at me? How is he approaching me? Is this person going to be receptive of my feelings? And then the second thing you brought up, which I think is important, is how dating apps or these online apps have completely changed the landscape of crush, right? Because we're not really like the grocery store. When you think about it, like, we're not going to the grocery store and like asking someone, you know, now that I think about it, we're doing it online. We're doing it through Facebook. We're doing it to Twitter. We're doing it to Tumblr, now defunct. But we're doing it to all these different platforms now. So like the landscape of crush has completely changed, right? And this is just a random question that came to me. Now that that landscape has changed, are we missing something? Like when we think about the movie and how, like, you know, this in-person interaction and how like the feeling of the crush is, are we missing something now that this the way we navigate?
Mark, I rebuke that. I rebuke all of that personally.
Okay.
I rebuke it all. I think we're evolving, we're growing, we are pushing the limits, we're pushing the boundaries. And I think when we get to a place where we can accept that life, again, does not always operate in the form or fashion of, I'm gonna be walking down the street and meet the love of my life. I'm just gonna turn around and look, and like they're gonna be looking back at me, and I'm gonna be looking at them, and like it's to the beat. Like not everybody can have a Sierra experience, right? Because Sierra's experience is very organic. It wasn't something that happened online, but like Sierra's experience doesn't happen to everybody every day. So I like to look at it from a real world, realistic, vantage point and perspectives. We have all of these different tools and resources at our disposal to get out there and meet and to engage with people. Why not use it? And if not, making an informed decision about why it is that you don't want to use it, but not doing it in an irrational way, like actually rationally figuring it out why it is that I don't want to do this particular medium or approach. And have I, like Andres was saying, have I gotten to a place where I've accepted all of the risks that are associated with the medium of choice that I've chosen? For example, if I don't want to meet people online in this identifying queer space, and I only want to meet people as I see them walking past the sidewalk, I've accepted the fact that this guy might be straight, may not necessarily be gay. I've accepted the fact that I also can experience rejection from this person because they're looking at a perfect stranger coming up to them, like trying to engage when we don't have anything in common in this particular space that allows us that neutral territory. Like, I think we've come to a place where we're evolving, and I think a lot of people are just bucking up against that evolution. Progressivism is not something that's easily adopted. We've seen it time and time again with women's rights movements, civil rights movements, trans movements, like, all these other different things. Progression is just simply not something that's tolerated easily. We have companies now that are trying to get people to conform back into a workplace society Monday through Friday in an office space, when for the last 2 years, a lot of people have just gotten used to what their lives look like working remotely. And I think that level of progressivism is being bucked up against by a lot of the upper managements, if you will, to kind of conform back over into what it was. But what's also wrong with what's kept your business going for the last 2 years and people still employed? There's nothing at all wrong with it. I just think oftentimes we rebuke the world of evolution. And a lot of times either evolution is either you're going to adapt to it, or more than likely you're forced to adapt to it. I just think it's a little easier when you just kind of participate in on the process and allow yourself to have a voice and to be a part of the evolution and not kind of buck up against it.
That's a good point. Just to piggyback on that, Brandon, that's always been the case in society. It's called cultural lag, right? When the social society lags behind technological advancements, and then we have to catch up. And then what happens when we catch up? Then we're back to something else is launched in technology. So within the dating sphere, right, we've got social media apps and things like that. So we're slowly but surely catching up to it. But if you think about it, it's a more efficient way of dating, right? So we just have to catch up. And it's the same thing with work environments, right? Well, we're working much better in hybrid formats, but we're still stuck on the 9-to-5 routine, right? So that's, again, an articulation of cultural lag. So I'll pivot back to you, Mark.
Intentional dating, Mark, you and I will have our one-on-one about that. But in the world of dating,
people
just don't intentionally date. Like, when you're intentionally dating, who cares if this person's profile is super attractive? I'm sorry, not the person's profile, but the person. Yeah, they're attractive, but if you see a person with a really, really, really attractive picture, or many attractive pictures, but it's a blank profile, how interested are they in dating? And what is the risk that's associated with you sending them a message? You know nothing about them, and they care so much about dating that they gave you a blank profile to base it off of. Click to the next person, swipe left. Like, it's not worth the risk.
Sorry, I do want to highlight this one real quick though, because you brought up a great point, right? So what if they have a blank profile? I think one of the issues that we have now too, with so much information being thrown at us before you even go on the first date, is that you can kind of end up getting a crush on the social media persona that people are portraying. And I know because it happens to me all the time, where people reach out to me, and because they either see the activism or like the advocate side, they form this idea of like, this is who this guy is, and I'm attracted to that. And it's like, and that's another risk that we end up running into, is we end up falling in love with people's social media personas.
Yeah, and if you choose to move forward, like, I think when we are, again, going back to Mark's point of like risk mitigation, right? When we're looking at risk mitigation, if I saw your profile, I saw some things that I'm attracted to, you desire to have a family, X, Y, and Z, whatever it may be. Now that has allowed for us to initiate in some other types of communication in that online space or realm. But then once we take that and we move it forward, what is it in that conversation that justifies me wanting to have a 3-course meal with you? Nothing about that conversation justified a 3-course meal, but it probably did justify me saying, I could set aside time for like maybe 30, 45 minutes to meet up with you at the local Starbucks or whatever it may be, to have coffee with you. And then if I choose, because this date is going so well, to say, hey, what's your schedule looking like? Like, do you have some more time? I'd love to go across the street over here to this whatever, and we can kind of continue this if you're open to it. But like, why give yourself a full 3-course meal for the appetizer, the main course, and the dessert when that person hasn't given you anything to justify that? So again, going back to intentional dating, I think if we use a lot of rational thought processes as we're engaging in the dating process, it should hopefully stop us from making some of those decisions that allow for us to regret it. Like, hey, I'm gonna go to the restroom, but I'll be right back. Hey, can you text me an emergency because I need to leave? But if you were to mitigate it, there could have been like a couple of Starbucks dates and stuff like that that said, you know what, it's worth a 3-course meal.
Well, thank you. So this has been such a great conversation. I feel like we can go on for another 2 to 3 hours when we're talking about crush in the LGBTQ plus community, because it's having a crush is a very human experience, right? It's a very human experience, but the way that it looks and the form that it takes in the LGBTQ plus community, it differs a bit, as the film has shown us. I am going to pass it off to Dr. Earl for any final closing thoughts. But I thank you so much, everyone, for coming, for engaging with us in this brave space, for having this dialogue. And I'm going to pass it off to my co-host, Dr. Earl.
Thank you so much, Mark. I'd like to thank the panel for their wonderful insight. And in closing, I'd just like to acknowledge that, the purpose of these conversation starters is to shine light on topics that sometimes fall below the social radar. And with that being said, this presentation explored a unique and often overlooked complexity in the LGBTQ community. It is our sincere hope that it encourages more conversation in this area, as it is well needed. This is Dr. Earl, and on behalf of the entire onePULSE Foundation team, I'd like to thank you for joining us this evening, and we'll see you at the next conversation starter. God bless and good night.